of maybe how we're going to measure things. We've said workload is really important. If you measure, take some of those measurements, peak height, peak weight, velocity, you consider somebody to be within their growth spurt and you're looking at minimizing injury risk, other than just workload changes and monitoring kind of how much they are doing from a nuts and bolts perspective. Any recommendations with how a session or how what your interventions might adapt? And I am going to come to Paudie. Let's start with you, mate.
So yeah, that's a very interesting question, and it's something we get asked a lot around PHV. Firstly, I'd like to point out that PHV doesn't always affect the athlete. Yes, it puts them at risk of injury or for a bigger increase of risk of injury, but it doesn't always affect every athlete, PHV, and that's it's very, very important to point that out. But what we had been doing with guys that we know are entering PHV, we would increase. Now, Rodri could maybe jump in on this later on, that maybe we don't need to, but we go from measuring quarterly to every month then during PHV, just to keep a little track on things, particularly, limb symmetry, etc. With regards to nuts and bolts and how we modify things, the workload is the big one, reducing workload, reducing training stress on that athlete. But for us, offloading limbs that are sore. When I mean offloading, like if they're in resistance training exercises, we might reduce load that they're using for some of those lower body activities, for instance, and increase mobility. We place an emphasis on increased mobility and stability type exercises. I've seen lots of people when they're in the middle of PHV taking plyometrics away. I think you need to keep low level plyometrics in there to condition the tendons as they're growing and give them that strength and confidence. And a big one for me, for young coaches out there, when